Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're digging into some research that, well, it kind of throws a wrench into one of the biggest trends in AI right now. We're talking about the race for these massive context windows, and we're going to explore why those huge numbers you see plastered everywhere might just be a myth.
All right, let's get right into it. You've seen numbers like this, right? 10 million, a million, they're everywhere. These are the headline features for the most powerful AI models out there today, and they're all about the size of what's called the context window.
So, what are we talking about here? These numbers count tokens, which are basically the building blocks of language for an AI. And this whole context window thing, it's pitched as the AI's superpower, its ability to just absorb insane amounts of information at once. We're talking entire libraries, huge code bases, you name it.
I mean, the promise is incredible, isn't it? Imagine an AI that can swallow a whole novel and then just casually answer any question you throw at it. But, and this is a big but, as some new research shows, the reality is a whole lot messier. And that really gets to the heart of what we're looking at today. What is the actual, practical limit of an AI's memory?
Okay, so let's just rip the Band-Aid off and tackle this myth head-on. The idea that a bigger context window automatically makes for a smarter, better AI. It feels like it should be true, right? But the data, well, it tells a very different story.
You know, if you've actually spent time working with these models, this probably sounds super familiar. You give an AI this giant document, and then you ask it about some specific detail buried deep inside, and it just blankly stares back at you. It's like the information just vanishes into thin air.
So here's where the research introduces a really critical idea. It splits this concept in two. You've got the maximum context window, the MCW, that's the big flashy number on the box. But then you have the maximum effective context window, the MECW, and that is the number that actually matters. It's the practical limit of what the model can handle.
And the way the researchers define this MECW is really interesting. They call it the breaking point. It's not just where the model stops getting better, it's the exact point where feeding it more information actually starts to hurt its performance. It literally makes the model dumber.
This quote from the paper just nails it. The MECW is like an AI's working memory. So think of it this way. The big, advertised context window. That's the entire library. The AI has access to all of it, but the effective context window, that's how many books the AI can actually have open on its desk at one time to read and compare. It's the AI's real-time brain power, and it's way, way smaller than the whole library.
All right, so how did they actually test this? Let's get into the experiment itself and see how they went about measuring this so-called working memory, because this is where the rubber really meets the road. And hey, they didn't mess around. The researchers put a whole bunch of the top models through their paces. We're talking the big guns from OpenAI, Google, Anthropic, but also some of the best open source models out there. They really wanted to get a full picture of what's happening across the board.
So they came up with 4 different challenges, each one harder than the last. It's the classic needle in a haystack problem. First, just find one single fact. Easy enough, right? Then, find a few facts and do some math with them. Okay, a little harder. Then, summarize the entire haystack. And for the grand finale, find a bunch of facts and sort them. This setup let them see exactly where things start to break down as the haystack gets bigger and the questions get tougher.
So, what happened? Well, the results were honestly pretty shocking. And it wasn't just 1 or 2 models. This was a consistent pattern across pretty much everything they tested. The findings were, to put it mildly, stark.
I mean, look at this. The data is just crystal clear. As they stuffed more tokens, more pay, into the context, the model's accuracy didn't just take a little dip. No, it absolutely cratered. It went off a cliff. For most of these tasks, performance was great with a small amount of information, and then, boom, it just fell apart.
Get this. Every single model they put to the test failed to live up to its advertised context window. And we're not talking about missing it by a little bit. The actual usable limit was often more than 99% smaller than the number on the sticker. That's just wild.
And this quote from the paper really drives it home. This is staggering. We're not even talking about millions of tokens here. Some of the absolute top-tier models started to fail with just 100 tokens in context. That's like a paragraph. And by the time they hit 1,000 tokens, most of them were in serious, serious trouble.
Okay, but wait, it gets even weirder. The researchers also found that there's no such thing as a single best model. It turns out a model that's a genius at one kind of problem might be completely useless at another. This table is a perfect example. Take a look at O4 Mini from OpenAI. It's a smaller model, but it was one of the champs at the harder multi-needle task. But when they gave it the super simple job of finding just one needle, it was one of the worst performers. So yeah, you absolutely can't just pick one best model and expect it to be great at everything.
Okay, so what are we supposed to do with all this information? If you're someone who actually builds with or uses these AI systems, what's the takeaway? Let's break down the practical lessons here.
All right, here's the bottom line, the most important takeaway. Forget all that time you spend tweaking little settings like temperature or top P. This research says that the single biggest thing you can do, the most important lever you can pull to make a model more accurate, is to control the size of its context window. Period.
And this is absolutely crucial if you're working with RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation. The entire point of RAG is to feed the model the right information. And what this shows is that giving it small, bite-sized, relevant chunks of data, stuff that fits inside its effective memory, works like a charm. But if you try to force-feed it too much, if you go past that limit, you actually make it worse. The model becomes less accurate than if you had just let it answer on its own.
So, this all boils down to some really clear, practical advice. We've got to stop chasing that giant context window number. We need to get smarter, more strategic. Pick the right tool for the job, the right model for your specific task. Tweak your RAG systems to deliver small, laser-focused chunks of info. And just remember, the secret to cutting down on mistakes and hallucinations is simple. Don't ask the AI to juggle more than it can actually handle.
Which leaves us with one last big question to think about. Is this whole race for bigger and bigger context windows just a distraction? A false promise that's pulling us away from what really matters? Maybe the real breakthrough in AI isn't going to come from building a bigger library, but from learning how to be a much, much smarter librarian.